So I wanted to start this week off on a bit of good news. There was a story recently about this family farm. It's been in the family for 175 years. And the state of New Jersey wanted to, well, I stand corrected. It's not the state of New Jersey. If we're going to criticize someone, let's be accurate about who we criticize. It was a town in the city or the state of New Jersey. They wanted to seize this farm in order to build affordable housing for the residents. New Jersey did pass this law stating that all these cities need to start coming up with some housing. They're short, I don't know how much housing. Anyways, so they were planning on taking this family farm. Initially, they were offering, a couple $1 million. I think it was like the total was 20 some odd $1 million. We'll go through this article here in a second. But after the family repeatedly said no, which they are entitled to do so, the city began the process of taking the family farm. The reason why I'm bringing this whole story up is, I've been following it, for one. I was planning on talking about it last weekend, but work got in the way, unfortunately. So I wanted to talk about it this weekend, but it got resolved last week. And basically, the city kind of dropped their claim to the farm after it got nationwide attention. But I've noticed that a lot of individuals, specifically in the MGTOW community, they're trying to build up their own little havens. I know that like Riggs just went to Hawaii to go build up his little piece of paradise. Brandon Trueblood has also discussed how he wants to build his own little piece of paradise as well, and I think he's in the process of doing that. But it's not just MGTOW. It's anybody who would like to escape society and build up their own little piece of paradise is going to run into this at some point. And this only reinforces an argument that I've always had, is that you are not owners. You're always going to be renting in some form. And the fact that, the city felt entitled to be able to do this until public pressure. Hey, what would happen if the nation did not really find out about it? Because, if you notice, our national discourse has been kind of, I don't know what you want to say, but it's very chaotic, and it has been for some time, and it just seems like it's getting worse. What would have happened had this fell between the cracks? And I think that this story could have ended up very differently if people did not speak out. And the other thing too is I think that once the news dies down on this, the city's going to try it again. So let's go ahead and jump into this article, since I've already set the table on this. So the individual in question was Andy Henry, and I got this from a more niche site, simply because I feel that the information in this article is a little better. It's AG Web. It's a farm journal. They have some very good stuff on their website. So if you get the chance to, definitely check it out if you're interested in farming and farming news. I'm not sponsored by them. I just think that they're really good people. So Andy Henry, and this gentleman right here, he basically beat eminent domain. His 21-acre, 175-year-old farm will no longer be targeted for government housing. He doesn't. So this article is a little deceiving. If I recall correctly, because I've read multiple articles. My mistake. I read multiple articles, and I don't believe he owns livestock. Like, he may own like one or two beefs, but most of them are actually on his property in a leasing situation. So he leases his land to other farmers, and they bring their cattle over to graze on his land and such. Anyway, so Henry's fight to save his livestock operation from development caught the nation's eye, followed by the attention of USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, and interim U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey, Alina Habba. And Alina Habba, I recognize this name. I don't quite remember how I recognize her name, but she's been in the news before. I don't follow New Jersey news, so I don't really know much about Phil Murphy, and then of course I don't know much about Brooke Rollins. So an agreement is set to permanently protect the farm, which is good. Again, permanence always seems to wither at the first sign of an opening. So we'll see what happens, but I'm not holding out hope quite yet. Anyway, so it says here, for decades, Henry declined $25 million development offers for Highland Ranch, his 21-acre farm in Middlesex County, New Jersey. What more than likely is going to happen is he'll pass, and then that's when the fight's going to happen again. Because if this is Andy here, it just looks like he's getting up there in age, and more than likely, if he does have children, they probably don't want anything to do with the place. We shall see. In April of 2025, so earlier this year, Cranberry Township, so that's the city here, is the Cranberry Township. They tagged the entire Henry property as the ideal location for an affordable housing apartment complex of 150 units. Henry, a 20-year Air Force veteran, refused to sell even though his land was designated by the Cranberry Township Committee for replacement with apartment buildings. So the man's a veteran too, a 20-year veteran, and he owns this property, and this is how they're treating him. Like, that's a double whammy. You know, one is you don't take American farms like that, and two is you don't target veterans like that. Like, especially in this country, that was like the worst thing. So I'm sure that the township committee saw dollar signs and didn't really think about the optics of this. And I constantly hear the stories about how, all politicians are corrupt and they're all being bought off and paid for and blah, blah, blah. I would argue that that's really not how that works. There's just a lot of busybodies who want to join these committees and such for a couple reasons. One is to pad their resume. And I saw that. Oops, I hit my mic. Let me refix that. My mistake. They want to pad their resume, and that was when I ran for public office. That was the one thing I saw. I ran as more of an idealist candidate, but a lot of people, they were just there to pad their resume. Even if they lost it, they could at least say, "Oh, I ran." Which I know the irony of me saying that is kind of there, but that's one. Two is a lot of people, they want to see their community develop in certain ways. Like when you live in a town where a new Chipotle is being built and the town is raving about that, that's what I mean. There are people that are like, oh, it would be great if we had a new Chipotle in town or something like that. Whereas the bigger towns, they're not like that because they already have those things. But in like really small towns, that's kind of a big deal for them. And then third is there are people that just want to exercise power over others, and this is the best way for them. They got bullied as kids or whatever. That's really the three types of people that tend to run in these smaller townships. Like Cranberry's probably a smaller town. I'm not saying that that's all of them. I mean, obviously, there have been instances like for, I've heard stories of like sheriffs who, if they come under budget on the food for the jail, they get to keep that as like a bonus. So they intentionally like stuff the jail full of like borderline inedible food just so they can pocket that money and then buy their fourth boat or whatever. I've seen that. But again, that's more of the law enforcement side, which I would argue is a different form of corruption. But as you go up, like if you're at a state level, then yeah, I mean, obviously the politicians there are definitely getting paid off. But local municipalities like this, generally speaking, no. And that's like the bulk of the politicians there. I mean, they tend to run for maybe a term. It's a volunteer position technically, so they're not even getting paid, and their voice doesn't really have much of a say. Like a committee like this is probably like 5 people, and they're just from different walks of life. I mean, they're not even on like the city council. Like if anything, they're just like volunteers, and they're people that are older and have nothing better to do. So it's like the equivalent of the HOA. Anyways, that's my diatribe on that. Anyways, so Andy hired an attorney, Timothy Duggan. Good job, Tim. If you need an attorney who specializes in land, probably talk to Tim. He does good work. So it says here, the public was disturbed by the government's action in this case. The details are so over the top to average people that they think they're watching a Saturday Night Live skit. Sure. I mean, that's not what I've seen. I'm sure that we're missing a big piece of context there. But I don't know. So anyways, in July, Henry filed a lawsuit challenging the township's ordinance, allowing seizure by eminent domain. He followed in August with a separate challenge. That's good. So then the township committee narrowed its acquisition of Henry's land by targeting half of the farm for concrete, leaving him with 9 acres in a farmhouse. So they offered to leave him 9 acres, which again, 9 acres, I mean, it's like in your mind, it sounds like a lot of acreage, but for agriculture specific, or for animals specifically, like cows and stuff, that's actually not a lot of space. They need quite a lot in order to graze effectively, because when they graze in certain plots, they need time to regrow all that grass before they can bring the animals in again. Yeah, it's just 9 acres is not enough. So anyways, Henry's refusal to rule drew admiration from multiple government figures. And then, of course, as pressure mounted, the township changed their tune. So, I'm glad that this happened. But my whole argument here is, what about the other farms that got swallowed up by eminent domain? Where was their support? And looking at this photo here, he's surrounded by development. If this is indeed his farm, that's what it looks like to me. 21 acres right there. But where was the support for all the other farmers who lost their land due to eminent domain? And nothing against Andy. I'm glad he saved his farm. I'm glad, a 175-year-old legacy like that gets to stand. But again, when he passes, this is going to come up again. And this should scare everybody who's trying to own their own plot of heaven there. What's going to happen when the government comes in and says, a golf course would be really nice here? Or we need half of your farm or half of your plot for apartments for, lower income people because they need housing. Where does this end is what I'm asking here. And I hope that anytime eminent domain is brought up, everyone here who's watching this video takes note. I really hope so. Like I said, I just, this is kind of why I don't want to buy land myself. I've toyed with the idea. I've thought about it, but to me, it's like, you're going to buy something that could be stolen at any time, and they're going to give you fair market value, which, what is fair market? You know, how is that math done? Because I mean, during times of boom, you know, housing prices shoot through the roof, and you know, there's an argument made that it could be overvalued, or arguments are made that if you buy at any time, it's only going to go up, which that raises its own host of problems. Like, everybody talks about this stuff, and I don't really think they put a lot of thought into what they're saying. Like, they hear it from somewhere, and there's just no reason behind it. Like, for example, let's take, the whole argument, it's only going to go up. Well, of course it's only going to go up because the value of the dollar is going down. If we look at the inflation of the dollar versus housing, it's almost a flat line. Yeah, housing has kind of outpaced it, but it's actually like the dollar has declined so much that you're just getting more. It's the same thing with gold. Everyone says, well, gold's going up in value. Well, no, gold isn't going up in value. It's just the currency's so debased that it makes gold seem more valuable by comparison. It's just, what I'm saying is it's like you're having these thoughts that seem like they're in an isolated bubble, but everything interacts with each other. I don't know. Maybe I'm incorrect in this way of thinking. Maybe I'm wrong in it, but that's just what it seems like to me. Hopefully other people feel the same way and they just are getting drowned out by the noise. I don't know. Anyways, again, Andy, good for you. I hope you get to keep your property for another generation, and then hopefully your kids don't sell it. Hopefully they keep it and enjoy it. But if this is any indication, like, I don't know, maybe it is time to sell. If I had a plot of land like that out in the middle of, these all look like, I mean, there's an apartment down here. There's an apartment up there. I know you guys can't see my mouse, but it looks like there's a lot of like industrial and maybe a shopping complex and then a couple of apartments. I don't know if I would want to own, a farm like that there, but I don't know. Either way, good job, Andy. Keep the fight going on, brother. I'm rooting for you. Anyways, if you enjoyed that good piece of news on your Monday, and this will come out on Monday because I want to start the week off on more positive news, then please like and subscribe and stay tuned for more of my videos. Okay? Have a good day.